Welcome, everyone. We're going to begin the webinar on how to use SEM Invoicing Tool. I'm Melissa Joles with RDA Impact. Jeff Haight, Regional Sales Manager for SEM, is your presenter for this webinar. The presentation will take approximately 20 minutes. We are recording it and we'll post it on our YouTube channel. If you have questions during the webinar, you can type them in the chat box at the bottom right of your screen, and Jeff will answer them during the presentation. Now, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Hi, thank you, and welcome everybody. I'm going to be showing you how to use our SEM Invoice tool today. Just a quick look at the agenda. I'm going to give you a quick introduction of myself and my work history and how I came to be here. And then we're going to talk about SEM Sealer application in the news, which is big news for us at SEM. And then how to use the invoice tool itself. And certainly you can chat in your questions along the way, or at the end if you have anything, be glad to answer those for you as well. So just an introduction of me. I got into this business growing up in the auto parts business with my father. When I was a teenager, I started polishing, detailing cars. Got a reputation with the body shops as the guy that could fix and make a black car go away back in those days. I filled in for a friend as a body shop manager for a week while he was on vacation. And Thursday, the general manager came down and asked me if I would want to be the body shop manager, and my very good friend would not be coming back. So that was kind of the start to me in the collision business. Until 1994, I worked in several different dealership collision centers, as well as some very large independent distributors. 1994, joined BASF. I worked both in the refinish division and the OEM division. 2011, joined AkzoNobel. 2014, I became part of the Valspar team, held a couple positions there. 2017, I came home to SEM, and very happy to be here. I tell people I'm no expert. I've attended numerous training and learning opportunities. I tell you that 10% that I hope to remember has kind of added up for me, and I remain a student of the industry. So that being said, I don't know how many of you got to catch this article in the Repair Driven News. It was published back in January, and it's really a survey to get with I think it's over 500 shops to see are they being paid for SEM Sealer and what the frequency is. And certainly when we're done, if you're interested, I can send out this presentation and you could have the link to the article, and if you'd like to use that as a reference. But the question is, are you getting paid for applying SEM Sealer? Well, in their study, 93% of the 500 shops said they were. They were either getting paid most of the time or all the time. And more than 95% of the shop survey said they asked to be covered for the material. And that's key right there, is the asking part. A lot of shops are afraid to ask, afraid to go against the DRP agreement. You know, one thing the study also found was that they were paid regardless of whether or not they were part of a direct repair program. So I think that's key. And I run into a lot of shop owners that are afraid to take that step, afraid to upset the apple cart, and come to find out it's not as big an issue as some people make it out to. So this chart right here is a little busy, but I just wanted to get it up on the screen to show you how it broke down by insurance company and then the frequency. You know, always, most of the time, some of the time, and sometimes never. So this is kind of how to read the survey, and the left gives you a graphic illustration to compare the relative payment frequencies. So that's what we've got on that. Now, this is a pretty interesting one. The first time I read this article, I did a double take. We do have the mixing tips on our invoice tool that you'll see, but a lot of times this is another thing that gets overlooked that shops don't charge for. And as you can see from this graphic here, the insurance companies are let's call it 45% average paying for it always, and then it kind of goes down from there. So pretty interesting stuff. So the invoicing system, shops were asked whether they're using invoice systems such as what I'm going to show you today for items that we call recoverable items: clips, fasteners, seam sealers, weld-through primers. And this is where my group has to do a lot of work, right? As you see the chart over there, my big competitor is on top of the heap there. The one thing I find encouraging about this is that it looks like the shops are moving to that. Because if you look to the left there, it says 34% of the shops said they don't use an invoice system. So those guys are just letting the money go out the door. One of the things too is the educated guess, right? Or taking a swag at it. That is also, you could be charging too much. You could very much more likely not be charging enough. So that's just a little interesting piece on that. When you charge for this seam sealer, what do you take in account? And they break that down by statement: number of tubes, type of brand or seam sealer, the material calculators that are becoming very popular. I think Paint Logic is the most popular that I see out there, and that's where they're billing for every ounce of paint, every square inch of masking paper, masking tape, and they also do the same for the seam sealer. The next thing on the list is the length of seam sealer used. This really came on pretty strong about 3 or 4 years ago, but I've seen it kind of die off, and that's where I call it your grandma's yardstick, the old cloth yardsticks she used to wear or measure you to make clothes with. People use that. People also take a piece of string and, make 6-inch increments so they can measure it out that way. Either way is fine. Our tool will accommodate you on that. But I honestly see it used less and less. The next thing on the list is the flat fee. And this is the one I feel like a lot of shops get caught up into. In their estimating systems, they have what's called add-ons. And this is where they might add on a car cover, a flex additive, hazardous waste, and yes, also seam sealer. So as I said, in one of the prior slides is, are you charging enough to cover what you used? And like I said, I see this a lot of the times where I'll speak to a shop owner. Yeah, I'm charging for seam sealer. Oh, what are you charging? Well, I do a $25, anytime I use a tube, and maybe it averages out. But I'd rather be much more exact and make sure that that I am getting paid properly. And scale down to the last of the list, the one that I'm most afraid of, right? The educated guess can go against you either way. So just kind of review that. The shops are getting paid for materials when they ask, but the bigger question is, what about labor? Is it included? So the same source that I used, the same source that did the survey on who was getting paid, they also have some great information, and not only to answer the questions, but as you see, I take you through this, they're going to have documentation to back up what they say. So I have seen this where you get a shop gets into an instance with an insurance adjuster who's unwilling to pay. You start breaking out OEM documents and procedures and linking to that, and boy, they sure changed their tune quick. One thing I wanted to let you know, this is bolted on parts to the structure. The seam sealing the structure parts is sometimes included, but it's very tricky. I've had arguments. I've been doing this for a couple of years now, and I've had some arguments on both sides, and really depends on what shop estimating suite they're using and what database it pulls from, whether or not it's included. But on a bolted on part, I can tell you, is it required to apply seam sealer to a bolted on part in order to return the vehicle back to pre-accident condition? The answer to that is yes, right? It's definitely required. Now more than ever, with not only Carfax, but your, I don't know where you're located, diminished value in my state of Georgia is big and has been for a long time. And these guys, I don't want to call them ambulance chasers, but they're pretty darn close. They pull the court records for the accident reports and then contact the claimants and help them file a diminished value claim. And so with all that, it's really important to get that vehicle as close to pre-accident condition as you can. So the second question is, applying seam sealer to bolted on panels included in any other labor operation? And the answer to that is no. It is not included. You're going to see some breakdowns with some of the different systems, but this is a key thing. And from a guy that's worked a little bit in the shop, I can tell you that a technician can put a lot more pride in something when he knows he's going to get paid and paid properly. So rather than the same old complaint of I do so much for free, here's an opportunity for you guys to step up and get compensated. So is there predetermined times for applying seam sealer to a bolted on panel? The answer to that is Mitchell does include the time on an R&R time, but you've got to verify that. We've seen holes in that as well. And from what I've seen, Mitchell is probably the least popular for the shops. It seems to be very important, or very much involved with the insurance companies. The other two, the Auto Explorer and the CCC seem to be the more popular, and they do not provide times for that at all. So if you're familiar with how an estimating suite works, when you do enter this, it will be a manual entry, and on the estimate, it will flag that as sort of a judgment call. And the guys that sit in the ivory tower and look at estimates and make suggestions on it, they're going to go right to these lines and check them out. So just a side note on that. So I told you that it's available to be paid for. So what is it worth, right? And just as I said, it's really up to the estimator to use judgment time, since there is no database given here. I can tell you, don't go crazy. But you know, if it is a big job, I would recommend documenting, whether you use clock time, document with pictures, just to prove your point and to keep everything above board. So just to review on this first section is, if you ask to be paid for seam sealer, there's a high probability that you will be paid. Labor is not included. It should be added to the claim. And as I mentioned before, many shops do that line add-on item. I just put there for corrosion protection, $15 to $30. And you know, the key point there is they're missing out on material and labor sales. So our SEM invoice tool can really help you with that. And let's dive right on into that. So what is the tool and why do we need it? The tool is a very simple Excel file. It creates an invoice for materials that were not included on the first estimate. You can study body shop law. I've been a consultant from the paint companies, and I can tell you that the insurance companies must pay for items that are used in the repair if they're invoiced properly. They can argue till the day is long, but that is the law. The second point there is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, because even today, not so much today, but in my paint company lives, I would always get beat up with, I'm not making any money on paint materials. And every day right now, collision centers are delivering cars without charging what they're due by law. When the collision center does charge for that, that money is gross profit going straight to the bottom line, right? I ask a shop, how do you fix a car? Well, they think about it, and I said, well, you fix a car the right way, no matter how many times it takes you to do that. So this is just an example of that, of getting paid for what you do and what you've applied. So this tool will enable you to create a valid invoice to submit for reimbursement. And with that, we're going to take some preliminary steps. I can either, if the RDA wants to send me the emails, I can send out the Excel file along with this presentation that you can have for a reference. But the very first step is to save a template. And I recommend actually saving 2 templates. Save one as just a blank clean template like you see here. And then the second file, we leave this totally customizable up to the shop, because as I travel around the country, I find it different. Insurance companies want different things. Sometimes the insurance companies want the invoice from the distributor. So the shop can, sometimes the shop's called the distributor, but sometimes that can be tedious too. So the shop can simply add the address or the logo of the distributor to the file, and I would recommend you save that as a template as well. Next key thing is you have to have Excel. It works on everything from, I think I had Excel 92 or something from the 90s. It worked fine. The third key thing here is to enable the macros, and I'm going to give you a better example of that, but that is key. If you don't do that step with enabling the macros, some of the functionality or most of the functionality in the invoice tool will not work. So what you see here is my current version of Excel, and before I can even save it or do anything, I've got to enable editing. And like I said, I think you'll see that in the 365 or above Excel versions. It's going to want you to do that before you can even save it. The next thing will be what I was talking about, the enabling macros. For my version here that you see, it didn't say enable macros, it said enable content. It is the same thing, but you want to make sure you do that. As I said before, failing to do that, you won't be able to really use any of the functionality of the tool. So as I told you before, we leave it totally customizable to you. You can enter the header information as desired. you know, whether that's shop name or distributor name. You can also load the customer info, invoice number. One key thing I'd like to point out from here, we have the ability to mark this up, and it's up to 25%. I know you're going to see that on the screen now, but when you go to the print or the save button of this, you're not going to see that on the invoice. So if a shop does want to mark it up, they can. Our pricing that is loaded will be our current user pricing. Well, I know what you see on the screen says 17, but it's actually today it's loaded. That's 2019 pricing. So this is what really sets us apart from our competition right here, is step 2. We have loaded specific jobs that our products are used on. And when you pull the drop-down box over there on that side, it's going to give you quite a few choices of repairs that we see. When you select one, it's immediately going to load the products that we find most used in that repair. So, and you have several options for that. As we get to it, you can enter other SEM part numbers if you want. You'll know if you put the part number in and it lights up red that something's wrong. You might need to check the part number, and that usually fixes that. But you can also, and I'm going to show you that later, we are not just locked into the SEM products. If you would like to add clips and fasteners, we have an option for that as well. So tax is a thing, and in different states that I work in, there are certain items that are taxable and certain items that are not, or it could be one way or the other. But we give you the option in this tool to select each item taxable or not, and then of course down there in N82 you can clearly add your tax rate for your area. So what is also neat about this tool is the quantity used tab or cell. You can use partial quantities, or you can use full quantities, or you can use 1.5. You're totally flexible with the materials that you bill for. And you know, some people I talk to, I charge for a tube whether I use it or not. Hey, I'm okay with that. I'm just giving you the option that you can do partial tube, half tube, 3/4, whatever the case may be. So I talked about this earlier about measuring the seam sealer or adhesive that you extrude, that you measure that by feet, and we have it built in. As you can see on the far left, all you have to do is put a character next to the line that you want to enter by feet. I just put F to make it simple, and then under quantity used, I put 5.5 feet, and it calculates the seam sealer, or that's plastic material, in feet, in linear feet, versus doing it by the tube. So that option is available. So finally, we're all done. We've got everything the way we want it. You have 2 options to print or make the final invoice. The print button, pretty straightforward. Click it. What it will do is convert this Excel file into an Adobe Reader file that you see there on the right. I think it's a very good looking invoice. The most popular thing I see is to export and save it. So where you would actually export that Adobe file to somewhere on your computer or your documents, or maybe in your estimating suite, and pick that invoice up in the supplement, and then submit it to the insurance company. So like I said, that is the more popular of what I see. I do still have some old school guys that print it out, scan it, or print it out and fax it, believe it or not. So a couple key things in this, because it's built with macros and cells and tabs that work together. Do not delete any rows or columns. When you get the file, you're going to see that it's a pretty long invoice, but when you go to the export or save button or the print button, it's going to consolidate that and give you, just that 1-page invoice. I really haven't seen anything go over 1 page, but if need be, it will do that. So, and like I said, these buttons will create a professional looking invoice. And voila, there we are. What one looks like, and I believe that's a saved Adobe file, but this is what the shop would use to upload it to the insurance company. So this is something neat and something that, once again, some of our competition does have very few, but you can add, you can make your own jobs. For instance, I have a shop that does box panel trucks, and they use quite a bit of materials, and they use the same materials on the job, so they're actually able to go into this system and create a job for that box truck and be able to reference that every time they repair one and submit for materials. That is on the left. Now on the right, what you see is where you would add your custom SKUs or parts. And that could be anything from spreaders. I have Christmas tree clips on there. I've seen rags and towels, hazardous waste fee. I've seen a couple of creative things on there, but you are able to customize that 100%. And then, of course, when you do that, you'll enter the invoice the same way you did with a regular job. And as you can see, I added the Christmas tree clips to this estimate or this invoice, and sure enough, voila, it's there. So just to kind of take a quick overview on building that invoice, here's an instance where I added much more custom SKUs or part numbers and added them to a job. I created a custom job, and then I entered not only some SEM products, but some of those custom products that I made. And once I did that, I come back to the invoice system, and then I just add the rear, or just go to the rear body replacement selection, and it loads up to the invoice everything that we have. Most, like I said, most popular is to click in export and save, and voila, the invoice is there. So just a quick review is why do we need the tool, right? It's an easy to use, quick tool that creates an invoice for materials not included. As I said, this will signal the insurance companies to reimburse the shops. Most centers are using these products and they're just not asking to get paid. Comments that I've got from clients that I've showed this to and implemented in with them, they find our system much more easier. Some of my competitors require you to have part numbers to enter the invoice, and although that might be easy for some of the techs, most of your office and estimating staff is just not familiar with the SKU numbers to be able to do that effectively. So I have found that ours is much more popular. So with that, I think I'm on time. Yep, right at 23 minutes. With that, I'll open it up to questions. If anyone has anything for me, I'm glad to help you here.
Well, we don't have any questions. I did want to mention that I'll send everyone your contact information. And if they do want the Excel file, they can contact you directly. Okay?
That would be great. That's awesome. We can do that. And with the Excel file, I will send this presentation so they can use, like I said, some of the articles that I had here for reference.
Great. Okay.
All right.
We'll go ahead and conclude the webinar. We appreciate everybody's time. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel for past webinars, and we appreciate your comments and your thumbs up if you like it. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.